across the front row, Rab McElnay on pole, Carl Foggerty race stringer, Roger Burnett and Terry Rymer on yet another Yamaha completes the front. The Nortons were not on the front row. In fact, Steve Spray was 6th qualifier. He was on the 2nd row. Terry Rymer, number 7, goes through into the lead. So the World Superbike contender Terry Rymer leads. A tentative feeling his way around this first lap, and so would I have to say that the conditions here are far from ideal, and a 750cc, very powerful 4-stroke is a handful and a half at Cadwell. It's a handful in the dry, never mind when the conditions are like this. Grey and misty, a lot of low cloud. Just how wet it is can be clearly seen by the camera lens on Roger Burnett's Suzuki number 9. So Roger Burnett having a fairly tentative start as Terry Rymer leads away down the back part of the circuit. Terry Rymer leads. Glistening water on the tarmac, not ideal conditions, Steve. This has been a real pity because the 750 race always a cracker.
Yes, it's a shame really, but the tyre choice is absolutely critical here. We have a 15-lap race, so the conditions need to stay the same throughout. I think the majority of the riders all have full rain tyres on, and if it does dry out, we're going to see some real fireworks and some real problems for the drivers. But very gingerly taking this section here, the mountain section, as they accelerate up here. And it's a big problem to know what speed you can race at, because if you're leading, you can easily fall off, and the guy behind you just finds out where it's slippery and where it isn't. So Terry Rymer's got a big problem here. An even bigger one that Carl Foggerty's right behind him, because Carl is a master in these conditions. He proved it by winning the senior TT 3 weeks ago in similar conditions. So Terry Rymer is going to struggle to stay in front of Carl Foggerty, and indeed Trevor Nation, who is right behind him also.
Trevor Nation in 3rd place, just rounding Barn Corner, where he fell very heavily last year in the Super Cup, damaging the little finger on his right hand very severely indeed. But all's fit and well now, and the Black Norton of Trevor Nation slipping through the inside of Carl Foggerty's Honda. So Nation up to 2nd. Trevor Nation was unlucky at Snetterton. He fell in practice and was unable to take part in the race, so he has no points at all. Teammate Steve Spray, who rides number 20, won the race at Snetterton, so he's on 10 points. And it really is an interesting situation. Nation is very good in the wet, as you say, Steve, and he's very confident. He certainly looks as though he's about to have a go at number 7, Terry Rymer, but a long, long way to go. Yeah, the Norton lends itself also to these conditions. It's a very torquey engine. It has a lot of bottom-end power, with it being the rotary engine, and so it would make it a fairly easy machine to ride in these conditions. But Terry's doing a good job here. You can see how wet it is, the spray flying up there. But and Steve Spray, who is down his 7th spot, is going to have to work his way through if he wants to increase his championship lead, because Terry Rymer is in 2nd spot in the championship. So with a win here, if he can pull it out on these 15 laps, will put him way in front of the championship. 23 years of age, number 7, Terry Rymer, former schoolboy motocrosser many, many years ago. 3rd in the Superbikes and 2nd in the F1 1989 Super Cup Series. Looking to go one better, obviously, this year. Currently concentrating on the World Superbike Series. Yeah, Terry's currently in 7th position in the World Superbike Championship, one behind Rob McElnay. So his efforts have really gone into the World Superbike Championship this year, and in fact it's a possibility that he'll have to miss the next round of this championship to compete in Austria. Obviously the World Championship is where he wants to be at, and I can't blame him, because he's a very, very talented young rider. Well, the pace hotting up now. Terry Rymer on lap 3 at the front, but the Black Norton of Trevor Nation, number 5. Trevor Nation from Salisbury in Wiltshire in 2nd place, and looking very menacing indeed in these wet conditions. 30 years of age now. Has, if it's true to say, I suppose, played second fiddle to a degree to Steve Spray, who scooped all the honours last year in the Super Cup Series. But Trevor Nation, the man who took the Norton to the TT and finished 2nd in the senior race, behind the man who is in 3rd place behind him in this race, Carl Foggerty. Foggerty had 2 wins at the TT in the Isle of Man just 3 weeks ago, and he is the double World Formula One champion, with his eyes firmly set on moving either into World Superbike or Grand Prix in 1991. race leader, number 7, Terry Rymer from southeast London. Behind him, Trevenation on the Norton. Behind him, Carl Fogerty from Blackburn on the Honda. So these three now getting away, but still very tentatively feeling their way through over the mountain. The front wheel of the Norton comes up. He's on the inside line, Nation, and he's through, and that was a bold move.
Yeah, very bold. He got on the power coming out of the mountain section. He kept the front wheel low, which you don't go anywhere while your wheels are in the air, and powered up as they come up to Hall Bends there. A nice manoeuvre, but I wouldn't think neither Carl Fogerty or Terry Rymer are that concerned at the moment, because they want to just follow in second or third position, see where it's slippery, see where they can make their move towards the end of the race. But I would, at this point in the race, would prefer to be in second or third spot than leading. But not so for Carl Fogerty, as you see, tries to go up the inside there. Carl's never been a man to want to be in second spot for very long, and he had a little nibble up the inside there of Trevenation, but decided to call it for another lap. But he'll possibly be pushing. Rob McElnay's closed this gap right up. He's had the advantage of being able to see what's going on and check the pace out.
Carl Fogerty, number 4 in second place, has as his overall ambition to be the next British 500cc world champion. Now, I suppose that's something that every road racer aspires to, because it is the ultimate accolade to win the 500cc world championship. Carl Fogerty certainly is one of the more talented riders on the British scene, and certainly if he can move into the world arena next year, that'll be useful for him. Get the right machine under him, his aggressive riding style, those are all the ingredients he needs. He's having a look now. Oh, that need almost, and Carl Fogerty goes straight on, and that was tricky stuff. He almost took Trevenation with him, but a good cool head on Fogerty's part, and even cooler head on Nation's part. Steve,
it must have scared the life out of Trevenation, because Trevenation was on the brakes, and you can see it's dropped him back. As we do it in slow motion, Carl Fogerty, he's locked the front wheel. You actually saw the front wheel lock. He had to let the brakes off, and his only choice was to go straight on the grass. Foot down, and he gingerly just creeps back on the track, but it's put him down into 6th spot now, I believe. But poor Trevenation, I feel for him.
Well, that certainly gave him a fright, because it allowed number 19, Big Rob McElnay, the Humbersider, the ex-Grand Prix campaigner, to go through in the lead. McElnay was 3rd at Snetterton. He's on 8 points, but he's out in front now. His teammate Terry Rymer is with him. So Big Rob Mac, using all the experience he has to keep the youngster at bay, but he's gone through. The Norton of Trevenation is not finished yet. Trevenation will fight back from that, what has to be a tremendous fright, to get back with the leading contenders. He certainly was very lucky indeed, but the two Yamahas now getting away.
Yes, and there's a real battle going on here. They are teammates, but they both want to win. As you see, they're struggling for the lead here. But the problem is, on this top corner, they're coming up to Park Corner here, is a lot of oil was spilt early on in practice, so there is only one line through there, so I don't see any passing manoeuvres being done here. Terry Rymer's quite happy to sit there. And if Rob McElnay can pull away here, then it's going to be a lovely finish for them.
Rob McElnay is something of an all-rounder, because away from the road racing scene, he competes quite seriously in trials to keep his hand in with regard to machine control and balance, and that will be doing him no harm at all in these conditions.
Well, certainly it won't, and in fact it looked like Trevenation had been practicing with his feet down earlier on there, but no, Rob Mack is a very experienced trials rider, and he's also a very experienced golfer, so he likes his outdoor sports.
Obviously not too worried by a touch of wet weather. Rob McElnay leads from number 7, Terry Rymer in 2nd place. Number 5, Trevenation is 3rd. Brian Morrison, number 2, the man who was so very, very good in 1988 and then faded just a little bit into obscurity in 1989, but seems to be back on the pace now. Brian Morrison on the Honda, the Tony Scott-tuned Honda, is there in 4th place. He was the winner of the Superbike class in the 1989 Supercup. 30 years of age, Morrison, but he's in 4th. And 5th place man as well, tucked in there behind them. That's number 4. Foggerty now coming back as I speak. He moves past Morrison back into 4th. So Foggerty, after that little upset at the bottom of the gooseneck before Mansfield, is now up to 4th and right with Trevenation. And I would imagine Trevenation must be thinking, don't come close again, Carl, whatever you do, you nearly took me out last time. But the battle at the front, Rob McElnay, number 19, leads Terry Rymer. Yamaha, Yamaha. Norton in third, Honda in fourth, and Honda in fifth. So these five, Steve, they've settled down now. Will they be testing each other just to see if they can go a little bit faster each time and stay on it?
I think so. As the track it dries slightly, you can see it is beginning to slightly dry, but it's still very wet, and they'll be going a bit quicker. The tyres will be working better as they get more temperature into them. The suspension will be working a bit better, but it'll be very difficult for Rob McElnay to know the speed to go. He can only go as fast as he wants to, and the rest can watch him and pick their moments to pass, but it's actually closing up again. It's very, very difficult to lead a wet race.
The Supercup Series has now become the premier championship in the UK, so just about all the riders who are free to contest it, whether they are Grand Prix campaigners or not, certainly do whatever they can to make sure they ride in the Supercup. There's an awful lot at stake, £80,000 in total prize money, 10 points for every first place picked up during the series, and of course the amount of exposure the sport is getting of late has to be beneficial to motorcycling in general. Morrison is back past Fogerty, so Carl Foggerty, number 4, is down to 5th. Brian Morrison now is right with the Norton of Trevor Nation as the two Yamahas, Rob McElnay and Terry Rymer, storm away still. Terry Rymer was 2nd at Snetterton, Rob McElnay was 3rd. They are looking to get a bag full of points and will go home very pleased indeed if things stay the way they are. No sign yet of the series leader, number 20, Steve Spray. My only guess is that he doesn't like the wet, and Trevor Nation was indicating something there. I saw the hand go up.
Actually, I think it was Carl Fogerty telling Brian Morrison to stay behind him. There seems to be a bit of a battle going on there. Carl Fogerty is desperately keen to get up with the leaders. He was pushing past Brian Morrison there and gesticulating as he did, so he'll now be about to attack Trevor Nation, and I'm sure Trevor Nation will be very keen to keep him behind him.
The other aspect of that, of course, Steve, is to let him get safely away, so if he does have any more mishaps, he doesn't collect Trevor Nation with him. However, those three, Nation is now leading Fogerty and Brian Morrison very, very closely indeed. These are numbers 1 and 2 in the race. Numbers 19 and 7 on the bike, 1st and 2nd. Here they are, Rob McElnay from Scunthorpe and Terry Rymer from South East London, 23 years of age. Both teammates and both in the World Superbike Series, Rob McElnay having previously been 6 years on the Grand Prix scene. Now, Grand Prix racing, Steve, totally different kettle of fish, long distances, very, very powerful motorbikes. Is there any experience that can be passed on to this sort of racing?
Oh, very much so. Rob McElnay's been in Grand Prix for a long while, but at the moment there's only about 10 bikes in the 500 Grand Prix racing, and it seems that the World Superbike Series is growing and growing, and the Grand Prix are dying off a bit. It's very sad to see this. And a lot of the young riders we see here, Carl Fogerty, Terry Rymer, would love to get into 500 Grand Prix, but it looks as though they're going to have to go to the World Superbike Series because there just isn't enough factory machines around at the moment. But undoubtedly, Rob McElnay's raced in conditions like this many, many times in the past, and it's proving that it's all been encapsulated in his mind, and he's putting it to very good use at this moment.
Number 4, Carl Fogerty, has achieved his race-long ambition and has gone past Trevor Nation into 3rd place. So Trevor Nation on the Norton is now down to 4th, riding a very comfortable and very nicely controlled race, as much as it can be controlled in these dreadful conditions. And I have to say the conditions here are certainly not ideal, and I don't envy these riders at all competing when the circuit is this wet. But Fogerty now is closing. He's got his eyes firmly set on the Yamaha pair ahead of him. He's just gone round in 73.51, which is the fastest lap, no way of course near the outright lap record of 85 miles an hour in the dry, but nevertheless very quickly indeed in the wet. Yeah, most definitely, and he's now closing on both Rob McElnay and Terry Rymer, and he is going to be the man to watch. I'm sure that both those riders saw his passing manoeuvre earlier on with Trevor Nation, so they'll be keen to keep him behind. But Carl is now the fastest man on the circuit, and he's charging. His feet are off the footrest. He is all over the place. He really should steady down, I think, and go for a 3rd, but that's not Carl Fogerty. He'll be wanting to be up front. But his feet were off the footrest, and he was virtually off the motorcycle at that last mounting corner. Winning streak, 2 wins, as I say, in the Isle of Man 3 weeks ago. Carl Fogerty really is forcing on. He's very, very quick round here, and he just seems to be paying scant regard to the very wet circuit. He's had 2 hairy moments. He almost took Trevor Nation out with him, And this is the second episode. You can see he's going in hard there. The back end breaks away. He's almost completely off the motorcycle, slipped off sideways, but he... Just how, Steve, does he stay on?
I don't think he even knows himself, because at that point he was off the bike. It just happened to slide and he flew back on it. I mean, I think he's been taking lessons from Randy Momola, because it was seen many years ago, him in the Grand Prix doing a similar sort of manoeuvre. But it's unbelievable. Carl Foggerty is a real charger, and he seems to be able to hang on to these machines at any angle.
He's not a big man either, just 10 stone he weighs, 5 feet 8 tall, so he's got a relatively small frame to be sitting across a huge 750cc Honda the way he is, and riding it the way he is, because the fellas ahead of him on the Yamahas are both fairly well built.
Yeah, and they're looking very smooth, and I think that's the way to ride in the rain. You just have to keep the machine as upright as you possibly can, get the power on very slowly and gently, and just try and be very gentle. And Carl isn't doing that, but it's not slowing him up, because he'll be charging back up there again in a minute. Steve Spray down his 7th spot at the moment, the championship leader, so he's having problems in these conditions.
Number 19, Rob McElnay on the Yamaha, and Fogerty closing again. Terry Rymer is now 5 or 6 bike lengths behind McElnay. As you can see, Terry Rymer there in second. There's Fogerty, Trevor Nation holding station there in 4th, and right with him, the ever-attendant Brian Morrison, number 2. So we're waiting for Fogerty to make another bold manoeuvre and go for the lead. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he were to do something reckless and really go for it, because first place is what he's after.
That's all he's ever after, and it seems to me when he comes up to the mountain section, he crosses the white line, which we spoke about earlier. Are very, very slippery, these white lines, when they get wet. They don't have the porosity of the tar macadam, and they're very shiny, and when Carl crosses it, his feet come off the footrest, and they even did it on the last lap, which we just managed to catch a glimpse of.
Well, the movement there from Brian Morrison was also wiping the visor just a little bit, but he's sitting in 5th behind the Norton. We are 2/3 of the way into the race distance, a little over 9 miles remaining, as Rob McElnay, number 19, leads teammate Terry Rymer in diabolical conditions here at Cadwell Park. But the crowd, and it's an enormous crowd, has stayed on, and they're being thrilled by some truly spectacular action from the 750s. And there's a lot more to come. We had a good 250 race earlier on. Tail enders now ahead of Rob McElnay. Number 50, that's Richard Defargo from Oxted in Surrey, as McElnay goes on the inside and almost frightens the life out of Richard Defargo, but Rymer is through as well. Foggerty has yet to come. I don't know if he'll survive this one.
Well, this could be quite interesting if they all arrive at the corner at the same time, but no, he's safely through. It looks like the back markers pulled over and let them all go through, because that's the only safe thing to do. Unfortunately, Terry Rymer was knocked off, or in fact fell at Donington Park when he came across a back marker, and there wasn't room for the two of them. But it's a great shame. But in all fairness, the back markers, they don't have mirrors, and they're trying their hardest, and they're going as quick as they can. But it's just a matter of trying to get on the inside of them and slightly shoving them out, as we saw Rob Mack do earlier.
Well, McElnay hasn't put a foot wrong. He's ridden a beautifully steady race. He's never looked like coming off. He's ridden nicely, comfortably. The tyre choice here, no question about it, full wets.
Full wet tyres, yeah. I'd like to think they've got them on. I would, looking at the angles of lean that they're at in these conditions, I can only assume they are on full rain tyres. It's a very difficult choice to make in these conditions, but it would certainly have paid off to be on rain tyres, because it's still drizzling now.
Drizzling it is, fairly steadily coming down on the windows of the commentary box here, and very much on the tarmac of Cadwell Park. That the fastest part of the circuit again. Up towards Park, coming round Park, the right-hander. McElnay leads Rymer, swinging wide. Foggerty Nation, Brian Morrison and John Reynolds on the team green Kawasaki in 6th place. So they're all in there, Yamahas, Hondas, Nortons and a Kawasaki in 6th. Exiting Chris Kerr.
This will be the point when Rob McElnay would wish it was only a 10-lap race. It's unfortunately for him a 15-lap race, so he's got to keep his concentration up. It's very hard to keep your concentration going for this. It's only a relatively short race, but even so, in these tricky conditions, you have to be exactly on line on every part of the circuit.
Riding on a knife edge here, and Carl Foggerty, who's sitting in 3rd place, actually journeys off to Villarreal in Portugal next week for a round of the Formula 1 Cup, which last year was the World Championship, has been demoted, if you like, to the Formula One Cup. He's currently leading that on 31 points. So he will be anxious to retain that championship. So obviously he won't want to do anything silly here, but I doubt if that's even in his mind.
No, that won't be in his mind at the moment. All will be in his mind is firstly passing Terry Rymer and secondly Rob McElnay. So he'll still be charging, but he seems to have settled down a bit at the moment. But I'm sure that with the remaining 4 laps to go, then he'll be making a charge at the end.
He's settled down to the extent that Trevor Nation and Brian Morrison are now right with him. Trevor Nation is doing everything he knows to shake off the relentless pressure from Brian Morrison. From Kokodi is right with him now, so the Scotsman in 5th place and pushing hard.
Yes, it looks like Rob Mack is pulling away from Terry Rymer. He's found that extra bit of speed towards the end there. The track is drying fractionally, but still with that drizzle in the air. There's no sign of a dry line at the moment, which is great for these riders, because being on wet tyres, it would cause them even more of a problem if it did change the conditions and dry out.
Out of the gooseneck, down towards Mansfield for Rob McElnay. So exiting Mansfield, Terry Rymer's right behind him. He's going along now through towards the bottom of the mountain section. Moves the foot slightly on the left. Bit of a gear change up, through and over the top of the mountain. The front wheel goes light, but that's as much as they need. Brian Morrison's still there. Rob McElnay riding a nice race. He's extended that lead now, and if he doesn't put a foot wrong with just a few laps remaining now, McElnay will get the 10 points and the £600, which goes to the winner. There's £11,000 at stake for each and every round in the Supercup Series.
Brian Morrison having a great ride there. He's not had the best of years, but he's certainly coming along now in his Honda. He's sat at the back of that pack, and he's not finished yet, I don't think.
Carl Foggerty now a little bit closer to Terry Rymer, so it could be that as Carl Foggerty gets the signals from his pit as to the position, he does something, if he can, about the Yamaha of Rymer ahead of him. So it's going to be very interesting. Look at Foggerty closing now. Carl Foggerty in 3rd place, sits up, down the gearbox. Rob McElnay has gone round quicker than anybody, and that's underlined by the gap which he has now opened out from the 2nd place man, Terry Rymer.
Yeah, we're going to have a real battle to the finish here, I think, with Carl Foggerty and Terry Rymer. And Trevor Nation's not out of touch, nor Brian Morrison. So those 4 riders battling it out for 3rd position here. Terry will be keeping an eye on his pit board. He'll also be having a glance behind him to see what's going on, but he'll also be keeping an eye on Rob Mack, because that's where he needs to be. He needs to be closing that gap. That way it will drag him away from Carl Foggerty.
Foggerty close now, right on the back wheel of Terry Rymer. And a faller there, yellow flag being waved. Somebody went off at the grass, but it's only the caution flag. The race goes on. So number 7, Terry Rymer. Carl Foggerty, right with him. Trevor Nation, number 5. Waiting now to pick up the race leader. Could that yellow flag have possibly been for Rob McElnay? We're not sure. We're waiting to pick that up. The tail end has come round, so McElnay has gone.
Yeah, it looks like
Rob McElnay has gone. So number 19, Rob McElnay, has fallen. Terry Rymer now leads the race. The yellow flag was for number 19, Rob McElnay. This is the new race leader, number 7, Terry Rymer, from number 4, Carl Foggerty, and that will spur Foggerty on even more.
Yeah, I think so. That was tragic for Rob McElnay. He looked so smooth, there was no problems there whatsoever, but he came into the mountain section, obviously locked the front wheel, up and down he went, so there's plenty of runoff area there, but a real problem.
Well, our computer in here is telling us that McElnay is running in 8th place, but it doesn't look as though he's back on the circuit at all.
Carl Foggerty seems to have gone. Terry Rymer in front, Trevor Nation behind. Carl Foggerty's disappeared also, so he's fell off at Barn Corner. I saw a yellow flag up there. Unfortunately for Carl Foggerty, he's also gone. So with his last remaining laps, Trevor Nation had a real moment there as he came under a back marker. So Terry Rymer just needs to coax this Yamaha around for the last remaining couple of laps, and he's got the race in the bag.
A A real race of incidents now as Trevor Nation in second place chases Terry Rymer, fighting off the challenges from number 2, Brian Morrison. So Morrison now is in third place with a glimpse of second. Trevor Nation just might be able to squeeze something out of the Norton. Terry Rymer, race leader. The lead was handed to him when Rob McElnay crashed out hard on the front brake, but gingerly the visor misting up as well, so that's a real problem.
Yeah, it's always a problem in these conditions. Yeah, you can see he's actually wearing a mask over his nose to try and divert the air down underneath the helmet, but in these conditions the rider getting very hot and it causes the visor to miss. So he's now starting his last lap, Terry Rymer on his last lap, so he needs to coax this Yamaha around.
Ahead of him, the tail enders. Number 36 immediately ahead of him, that's Michael Swan from Belfast on the Honda, but Terry Rymer slips through. He's past Swan. He's another tail ender just ahead of him. These are very, very cautious moments indeed for Terry Rymer. He's accelerating away now, fastest part of the circuit, dropping into the hollow, up towards Park Corner, the right-hander. So Terry Rymer leading the race now. Trevor Nation is still there in touch, but he has the tail enders ahead of him. This is the race leader, Terry Rymer. He finished second at Snetterton. If he brings this one home, he will move on to 19 points and lead the championship, and that will indeed be a good effort from the young Londoner. But look at Nation. Morrison's still with him. It looks as though Trevor Nation's going to have to fend off a challenge from Brian Morrison in the dying stages. A bit of a twitch there from Terry Rymer. It's still greasy and anything can happen.
Yeah, that's right. He hasn't won the race till he gets out of Barn Corner, which is the last corner before the start and finish straight. This is the part where Rob McElnay fell off, which was a great shame. Slid on there, but no problems. Plenty of runoff here. And now Terry's just got to coax the machine over the Barn Corner as they come round to Barn Corner, but I don't think he's got a problem. He'll have had good pit signals, he'll have been looking behind, but you can see he has a visor misting problem. He'll know he's on the last lap. I'm sure he's just going to easily win this one.
Round the hairpin, down towards Barn. One more right-hander. The checkered flag is being readied for Terry Rymer. The line's in sight, the checkered flag goes out. Terry Rymer comes across the line to win the TT 750 F1 Formula. Nation gets it from Morrison as the tail enders go through, but a super battle for second place. Trevor Nation was second, only just from Brian Morrison. Nation will be thrilled with that, and so will Norton. Honda were third, but the winner went to Yamaha and Terry Rymer, number 7.